It was August 20th, 2018, and the sun had barely risen over Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. The lush landscape of Sea Pines Plantation was quiet at that hour, where Casandra Cline, known to her friends as Sassy, had her holiday home. The birds had yet to start their chorus, and the only sounds came from the gentle rustling of leaves in the early morning breeze and the soft patter of Cassandra's footsteps as she walked with her dog, Kylie. She had no idea that this simple morning walk would soon cost her a hefty price, one she wouldn't be able to pay. Casandra had spent most of her life in Endicott, New York, where she had taught kindergarten for 16 years. She was beloved by her students, the kind of teacher who always went the extra mile for her kids. Retirement was just a year away, and she had already planned to leave behind the life she had built in upstate New York for a slower, more peaceful existence in Sea Pines Plantation. For years, she and her husband had spent their summers on Hilton Head Island, falling in love with its beauty and tranquility. It was meant to be their future home, a place to embrace retirement near the calming waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Casandra had always been an animal lover. She wasn't able to have children, and so her dogs were her babies, her loyal companions. Just 2 weeks before that fateful day, she had lost one of her pets. The grief had still lingered, and now Kylie, her Shetland sheepdog, was her sole source of comfort. They were inseparable. The walk Casandra was on took them around the side of a lagoon, a large body of water along the golf course that was home to a 9-foot alligator. The alligator, a familiar sight to the locals, was known to frequent the area. Casandra had always been aware of the dangers of the wildlife on Hilton Head Island. She knew to stay at a safe distance from any water, especially in the warmer months when alligators were more active. She kept at least 14 feet from the water's edge, always mindful of the risks. This morning, the residential estate was quiet. The greenkeeper was working on the 13th green of a nearby golf course just across from the lagoon. Cassandra's footsteps were soft on the ground as she and Kylie walked side by side along the edge of the water. The air was thick with humidity, and the sun had just started to rise, casting long shadows over the lush landscape. The alligator had been lurking in the murky water. Its dark, textured skin blended seamlessly with the shadows, and only its knobby head and eyes were visible above the surface. It was still, waiting for the vibrations that would signal the approach of potential prey. Casandra, unaware of the predator's proximity, continued her walk, with Kylie sniffing at the undergrowth and occasionally darting toward the edge of the lagoon. The sounds of her paws crunching the grass caught the alligator's attention. It moved quickly. In an instant, the alligator lunged, its jaws snapping at the leash attached to Kylie's collar. The dog, startled, scrambled backward, but the alligator had already grabbed the leash, pulling Kylie toward the water. Casandra screamed and her heart pounded as she rushed to save her pet. She had always been devoted to her animals, and in that moment, instinct took over. She sprinted toward the water, not thinking of her own safety, but only of Kylie's. The greenskeeper, hearing the commotion from across the lake, looked up. He saw the struggle from across the lagoon as Casandra fought to free Kylie from the alligator's grip. It was a desperate tug of war, the predator's powerful jaws pulling hard while Casandra yanked on the leash trying to save her dog. Both Casandra and Kylie were being dragged closer to the water's edge. Casandra managed to unclip the leash from Kylie's collar and the dog scrambled to safety. But the moment she was free, the alligator swung its head toward Casandra. In one swift motion, it latched onto her leg, its powerful jaws clamping down on her flesh. The force of the bite pulled Casandra further into the water. She screamed, but her cries were drowned out by the sounds of splashing water and the frantic barking of Kylie from the shore. The greenskeeper, now realizing the severity of the situation, pulled out his phone and dialed 911.
911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, there's a lady getting attacked by an alligator.
Where at, sir?
I'm in Cline.
Okay, where at in Sea Pines?
Hole number 13 of the clock course. I'm not sure what the road is.
Okay, you said that she's being attacked by an alligator?
Yeah, drag her in the water.
Okay, how big was it?
It's probably about 8 feet, maybe 7.
It's dragging her into the water?
And she's in the water right now.
Okay, what hole are you on?
It's hole number 13 up near the green. I'm driving to where the road is so I can tell you the road. I'll be at the road in like 30 seconds.
Okay, was anybody still out there with her?
There's one other person there. What do you do? You jump in the water? I don't know.
As the operator dispatched emergency services, the greenskeeper watched helplessly as Casandra was pulled further into the water. His heart raced as he saw her disappear beneath the surface, the water turning murky and dark as the alligator clung to her. Kylie, from the safety of the shore, barked frantically, but Casandra's struggle grew weaker. Underwater, Casandra fought for her life. She kicked and punched the alligator, but the predator's hold on her leg was unyielding. Her vision blurred as she felt herself sinking, her lungs burning for air. In less than a minute, Cassandra's fight came to an end. She slipped into unconsciousness, her body going still beneath the water's surface. The greenskeeper, watching from the shore, could do nothing but pray for a miracle. By the time emergency services arrived, it was too late. The alligator was subdued and euthanized by the responding team, and Cassandra's body was pulled from the water. The EMTs immediately began CPR, but their efforts were in vain. Despite their best attempts, Cassandra had drowned, her body showing signs of the brutal struggle she had endured. Kylie the dog was unharmed. She sat on the shore, her eyes locked on the spot where Cassandra had vanished beneath the water. When Cassandra's family was informed of the tragedy, they were devastated. Her mother, who had been at work when the news broke, could not comprehend that such a freak accident had claimed her daughter's life. Her sister, who broke the news to her mother, was equally shaken. They had lost someone who had been full of life and love, a woman who had dedicated herself to teaching and caring for those around her. To lose her so suddenly was beyond belief. It was a warm summer evening in June 2016 when Matt and Melissa Graves, a couple from Elkhorn, Nebraska, found themselves in what should have been a moment of pure happiness. They had spent months planning the perfect trip, a magical escape to Disney World in Orlando, Florida, a destination millions dream of visiting. With its vast 25,000 acres, 4 theme parks, and countless attractions, Disney World attracts nearly 60 million visitors a year. Families from all over the world come to experience the thrill of the rides, the magic of the fairy tale castles, and the wonder of the entertainment. But on this particular evening, the Graves family sought a moment of calm, away from the bustling crowds and roller coasters. Just outside their hotel, the luxurious Grand Floridian Resort and Spa, lay the serene waters of the Seven Seas Lagoon. A man-made body of water designed for boating and fishing, the lagoon was bordered by soft sandy beaches and lush greenery. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, its last golden rays shimmered on the still water. Families strolled along the shore, joggers enjoyed the cool evening air, and a few boats bobbed gently in the distance. Matt and Melissa had planned this night to be a special one. There was an outdoor movie playing by the beach, something new and exciting for their children. While other families gathered to watch, their 2-year-old son Lane and his older sister quickly lost interest in the film. The warm sand beneath their tiny feet was far more entertaining than a movie on a big screen. They were having the time of their lives, with no inkling that something horrific could happen. Their parents smiled as they watched them play. They had packed a bucket and spade for this very reason, knowing how much Lane loved digging in the sand. As soon as Matt handed him the bucket, Lane let out a squeal of excitement, his little legs carrying him toward the shoreline. He scooped up handfuls of sand, carefully packing them into the bucket, then turned it over, tapping it 3 times, just as his father had taught him. When he lifted it up, revealing a perfect little sandcastle, his face lit up with joy. Over and over, they repeated the process, each castle bringing another burst of laughter. Time passed quickly. The children were having so much fun that Matt and Melissa lost track of how long they had been there. Eventually, they decided it was getting late, but as soon as they stood up, Lane let out a frustrated cry. He wasn't ready to leave. He wanted to build just one more castle, play for just a few minutes more. His parents exchanged a look. After all, they were on vacation. What harm could it do to stay just a little longer? They gave in. As the family added the final touches to their sandy masterpiece, Lane got an idea. Every castle needed a moat. Excitedly, he grabbed his bucket and ran down to the water's edge. His tiny feet splashed in the shadows, his giggles mixing with the gentle lapping of the waves. The cool water swirled around his ankles as he bent down, scooping up a bucketful to bring back to his castle. Unbeknownst to them, something else had been watching. Something lurked beneath the still surface of the lagoon. Something waiting. Then, without warning, chaos erupted. A sudden splash, a monstrous surge of water, a blur of scales and raw primal power. And then, Lane was gone. Matt and Melissa barely had time to react before their world shattered. Their playful, giggling toddler had been snatched right before their eyes, dragged into the dark lagoon by an alligator. Matt leapt into action, his instincts taking over. He lunged at the creature, throwing himself into the water. His hands grasped the rough, rigid hide of the beast as it thrashed wildly. Lane was still in its jaws, his tiny body disappearing into the monster's mouth. With a surge of desperation, Matt wrapped his arms around the alligator and wrestled it, forcing his hands into its powerful jaws, trying to pry them open. But the creature was too strong. It twisted violently, its muscular tail lashing through the water, knocking Matt off its back. Then, just as Matt fought to free his son, a sudden movement in the water. A second alligator? For a fleeting moment, Matt was sure of it. A dark shape lunged in the churning water and he felt something strike his side. But in the chaos, he couldn't tell if it was another predator or the thrashing tail of the one that had already taken Lane. The water was a blur of foam and mud, the scene unfolding in a frenzy of panic. Matt's instincts screamed at him to keep fighting, to push forward, to keep searching for his son. But before he could react, the alligator holding Lane was gone, vanishing into the murky depths. Matt scrambled to his feet in the knee-deep water, his face white with terror. He took a deep breath and plunged into the water again, diving beneath the surface, his hands clawing through the mud and silt, desperately searching for his little boy. Nothing. The water was thick, brown, and impenetrable. Melissa screamed at bystanders, urging them to help, and then stumbled through the shallows, her voice piercing the night air. The baby, so small, so defenseless, had been taken in an instant. Alligators are ambush predators, silent, calculated, lethal. Unlike their crocodile cousins, they don't often attack humans, but when they do, they strike with terrifying efficiency. Their bite force rivals the weight of a small pickup truck, clamping down with enough power to crush bone. Lane had no chance. Horrified onlookers gathered at the shore, frozen in disbelief. They stared at the spot where the little boy had vanished, willing him to resurface. But with each passing second, hope faded, and no one was brave enough to help. Luckily, a few minutes later, emergency responders arrived. Sirens wailed, flashlights cut through the darkness. Officers leapt into boats, scouring the water surface. Matt was told to wait on shore while a massive search was launched. Over 50 officers combed the lagoon, diving beneath the surface again and again. Hours passed with no sign of the little boy. Then, after 17 agonizing hours of searching, Orange County divers made a heartbreaking discovery. Near a patch of reeds barely 15 yards from where he was last seen, Lane's small, lifeless body was found submerged in only 6 feet of water. His pale form drifted just above the lake bed, caught in the dense underwater vegetation. His arms lay weightless, swaying gently with the current. It was as if the alligator had released him shortly after the attack, leaving him untouched, hidden beneath the murky surface. The thick mud churned up during the struggle had obscured him from view, preventing searchers from finding him sooner. Rescuers carefully lifted him from the water, cradling his fragile body as they carried him back to shore, the place where his family had last seen him, where his mother had screamed his name into the darkness. But it was too late. Melissa Graves fell to her knees as her son was placed into her arms. Her cries echoed across the lagoon, a sound of pure heartbreak. Just the night before, he had been a giggling, playful toddler, building sandcastles, his tiny feet splashing in the water. Now he was gone. Rescue teams confirmed what the family already knew: Lane was dead. Strangely, there were only a few puncture wounds where the alligator had grabbed him. It wasn't the creature's crushing bite that had killed him. According to wildlife officers, Lane had drowned after being pulled under. The trauma to his head and neck was severe, but it was the suffocating grip of the dark waters that had ultimately taken his life. It was likely that when Matt launched himself onto the alligator in a desperate attempt to save his son, he startled the predator. Instead of eating Lane, the alligator had let go, but by then it was too late. Florida's waters are home to over 1 million alligators. Lake Kissimmee, just outside Orlando, holds nearly 2,000. With so many competing for food and space, some are forced to venture into unexpected areas, like the recreational lakes at Disney World. In the days that followed, wildlife officers tracked down and euthanized 6 alligators from the Seven Seas Lagoon. When examined, their stomachs were empty, suggesting the reptiles in the lagoon were desperate for food. Lane had done nothing wrong. He hadn't provoked the alligator, he wasn't splashing wildly drawing attention. He was simply a child playing at the water's edge. Wrong place, wrong time. His tragic death shook the nation. Disney World, a place synonymous with childhood wonder, had become the scene of an unthinkable horror. Since that fateful night in June 2016, Disney has installed warning signs along the lagoon's edge, alerting visitors to the presence of alligators. But for Matt and Melissa Graves, no sign, no warning, no amount of caution could undo what had happened. While alligator attacks in Florida are rare, across the world an even deadlier predator lurks beneath the surface. It was September 2005 on the remote and rugged Groot Island, located approximately 30 miles off the coast of Northern Territory, Australia. Russell Harris, born and raised in the UK, had long dreamt of adventure. He had traveled the world before settling in Australia, where he met and married Jennifer. Together, they sought out the warmth of Northern Australia, as Russell had secured a position with the Anglo-American mining group BHP Billiton. His job as a technical services superintendent brought them to the vast, mostly untouched island. Groot Island, Australia's 4th largest, was a haven for wildlife and home to one of the richest manganese reserves in the world. Despite the rough and largely barren terrain, it offered a promising opportunity for Russell. Groot Island, with its stunning coastline, was surrounded by some of the most pristine turquoise waters imaginable. While the island was home to many Aborigines, particularly the Warramunga people, it was also a paradise for the birds and animals that called it home. It boasted 83 bird species and was a nesting ground for green and hawk-billed turtles. Despite the island's heavy mining on the western side, it remained an undiscovered sanctuary of sorts. But like all paradises, it had its darker side. The waters that lapped against the shores were home to more than just tranquil sea life. They were patrolled by sharks, and lurking in the shadows were saltwater crocodiles, ancient, silent predators of terrifying size and power. On this particular day, Russell and Jennifer were joined by another couple, both of whom worked with Russell at the mining company. The 4 of them decided to take a day trip to Picnic Beach, a scenic and secluded area located in the northeast of the island. Despite the rough road that led to it, the journey was worth the effort. The beach was everything they had hoped for, a stretch of soft, flour-like sand and clear, inviting water. The bay was picture perfect, a place where the group could escape the demands of their work and relax. Jennifer and her friend stayed behind on the sand, while Russell and his companion decided to explore the water. The two men waded into the surf up to their waists before pulling on their snorkels and masks. As they submerged themselves into the inviting water, they marveled at the vibrant underwater world. Brightly colored fish darted among the coral, while large rosses swam near the seafloor. The water was clearer than they could have imagined, offering a view that stretched for yards below them. They swam and dived, pointing out sights to each other, enjoying the idyllic surroundings. What they didn't know, however, was that danger was not far away. Despite its beauty, Groot Island's coastal waters were far from safe. Saltwater crocodiles, larger and more aggressive than their freshwater counterparts, were known to inhabit the region. These creatures, capable of reaching lengths of over 20 feet and with a bite force strong enough to crush bone, were responsible for several attacks on humans each year. Most locals and visitors alike were cautious near riverways and estuaries, but few thought to consider the crocodile threat when swimming in open water. They should have been aware. Russell had heard about the crocodiles, but he had been assured that the area around Picnic Beach was safe. Little did he know, a predator was already closing in on them. While the two men swam near each other, neither noticed the large crocodile silently making its way toward them. The 15-foot predator had been drawn by the vibrations of the men's movements in the water. Using its natural instincts, the saltwater crocodile navigated effortlessly through the water, its tail propelling it toward its prey. Russell and his friend, unaware of the impending danger, continued to explore the sea life below. It wasn't until the crocodile was mere feet away that Russell felt an unexpected tug at his waist. At first, he thought it was a shark, but when he turned around, he was met with the terrifying sight of the crocodile's olive-green, scaly skin. Before he could react, the predator dragged him beneath the water. The fight for survival was brutal and swift. Russell's instincts kicked in, and he struggled against the crocodile, trying to pry its massive jaws off his waist. The creature's bite was unimaginable. Its powerful jaws crushed down with 3,700 pounds per square inch of force, the strongest bite in the animal kingdom. Russell fought for his life, but the crocodile was relentless. It rolled its body over and over, dragging him through the water, disorienting him with each twist. The pressure was unbearable, and Russell could feel his strength slowly fading. He could see the surface of the water just above him, but it was out of reach. Meanwhile, his friend, blissfully unaware of the terror unfolding just beneath the surface, continued his snorkeling. He dove down to examine a fish near the sea floor, but when he surfaced, he noticed Russell was gone. Confused and concerned, he called out, but there was no reply. He dove back under, scanning the area for any sign of his friend. When nothing turned up, he swam back to the beach, assuming Russell had made it out of the water already. As he stood on the shore, wiping the salt water from his face, he saw Jennifer and the other woman looking up, expecting Russell to return. That was when the cold realization hit him. Something had happened to their friend. His body hadn't been found, and no one had heard a commotion in the water. They quickly called emergency services, and a frantic search for Russell began. Hours passed, and the search for Russell took on a sense of urgency. The authorities dispatched boats while the police flew overhead in a plane, searching for any sign of the missing man. As the hours stretched into the night, the possibility of Russell's disappearance being due to the strong currents of the ocean was raised. Had he been attacked and taken by a predator like a shark or crocodile, or had he drowned? The search continued through the night, with everyone hoping for a miracle. The next day, the search was still underway. It wasn't until the following day that the search bore fruit. Russell's body was discovered, floating just outside the mouth of 8 Mile Creek, a river about a mile from Picnic Beach. As the police moved in to retrieve the body, a massive crocodile appeared in the water, swirling protectively around the body. It was clear the crocodile had been defending its kill. The injuries sustained to Russell's body were consistent with a prolonged struggle, indicating that he had fought fiercely but ultimately succumbed to the crocodile's brutal attack. Back in the UK, news of Russell's death struck his family with overwhelming force. His mother, devastated by the loss of her son, collapsed upon hearing the news. She was rushed to the hospital, sedated and unable to process what had happened. At that moment, she had no understanding of the true circumstances. She was only told that Russell had gone missing at sea and was presumed drowned. Russell's sister flew to Darwin to identify his body, struggling to accept the harsh reality. It wasn't until his remains were examined and authorities completed their investigation that the full truth emerged. Russell had not simply drowned, he had been attacked by a crocodile. The revelation sent a wave of shock through his family, amplifying their grief as they learned the horrifying details of his final moments. The tragedy of Russell's death became a somber lesson in the dangers of the Australian wilderness. Although the area around Picnic Beach had always been thought of as safe, it was clear that the crocodile population was much larger than originally believed. Russell had no way of knowing that a 15-foot crocodile was lurking in the shallow waters, waiting for the right moment to strike. Had he been fully aware of the danger, he never would have entered the water that day. It was late June 2024 in the quiet township of Naranga, nestled in the Northern Territory of Australia. The sun lingered low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the landscape. Naranga was a small, tight-knit community of 360 residents, most of whom were Indigenous Australians. With less than 400 people, you can only imagine how close everyone was. Life here was simple, communal, and deeply rooted in tradition. The evenings were often spent together, families and neighbors gathering to share stories and meals. That evening, as was customary, many of the town's residents made their way to the familiar waters of the creek to cool off and unwind. But what they didn't know was that this would be an evening unlike any other, one that would leave an indelible mark on the community. Barbara, a 12-year-old girl, was among the children who eagerly ran ahead, their laughter echoing through the bushland. The creek was a favorite spot, a place where the children could splash and play while the adults chatted under the shade of the gum trees. Barbara and her cousin, along with 11 other children, wasted no time diving into the cool water, their voices mingling with the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds. The adults, some sipping beers, others sharing snacks, watched from the bank, their presence a comforting backdrop. As the afternoon wore on, the group began to thin. Some children wandered back to the shore while others floated lazily, savoring the last moments of daylight. Barbara lay on her back, her body buoyed by the water, her breaths controlled as she floated downstream. She was lost in the moment, unaware of how far she had drifted from her cousin and the others. The creek's gentle current carried her toward the bend where it met a broader, deeper river. Unbeknownst to Barbara, the current was silently carrying her toward the crocodile's territory where it lay in wait. The saltwater crocodile had likely been watching the creek for days. These ancient predators are opportunistic and patient, often waiting for prey to stray from the safety of the group. Much like they might observe animals at a watering hole, the crocodile had studied the predictable routines of the humans. On this day, it saw its opportunity in Barbara. The crocodile followed her silently from below, its massive body gliding effortlessly through the water. Its belly skimmed the sandy creek bed as it closed the distance, patient and relentless. Barbara, blissfully unaware, floated toward the bend where the water deepened, and the others on the shore lost sight of her. Then it happened. The attack came swift and brutal. The crocodile surged upward with astonishing speed, its powerful jaws clamping down on Barbara. She had no time to scream. The force of the strike yanked her under immediately, the thrashing tail turning the water into a wild frenzy. Within moments, both Barbara and the predator had disappeared beneath the surface. The creek returned to its deceptive calm, the ripples fading as quickly as they had appeared. The adults and children on the shore, engrossed in their conversations and play, noticed nothing at first. It wasn't until Barbara's cousin called out to her and received no reply that unease began to creep in. The teenagers swam out to look for her, their laughter turning to concern as they realized she was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as the adults spread out along the creek, calling her name and scanning the water for any sign of the girl. By the time they had alerted the nearest emergency services, precious hours had passed. The closest response center, located in Dundee, was a grueling 7-hour drive away. Despite the distance, the first helicopter arrived within 3 hours and search efforts intensified. Hundreds of people from Naranga and neighboring communities combed the area, searching the creek, the river, and the surrounding bushland. Authorities suspected the worst almost immediately. However, no one was certain at the moment. The complete silence surrounding Barbara's disappearance pointed to a crocodile attack, an unsettling hypothesis given the creature's reputation in the region. Although such attacks were rare, the saltwater crocodile, measuring up to 20 feet long in some cases, was a feared and revered predator. For the indigenous community, these creatures held cultural and spiritual significance, a symbol of nature's power and balance. 2 days later, the search came to a grim conclusion. Barbara's remains were discovered tangled among reeds about a mile upstream. The recovery brought heartbreak but little relief. The body bore the unmistakable marks of a crocodile's jaws, and the extent of the damage left no doubt about the ferocity of the attack. There was little left of her, and authorities knew they had to act quickly to recover as much as possible before the crocodile returned to feed again. Based on the condition of the remains, experts estimated the crocodile to be at least 12 feet long. The search then shifted to focus on finding the predator responsible. Armed with this knowledge, trackers and wildlife officials scoured the waterways, determined to ensure the safety of the community. On June 7th, they found it, a massive 14-foot male resting on a sandbank, its ancient, unblinking eyes betraying no emotion as it lay motionless in the sun. The decision was made to euthanize the animal on site. A necropsy later confirmed the worst. Barbara's remains were found in its stomach. The aftermath left Naranga in mourning. The loss of a child sent shockwaves through the small community, touching every household. The creek, once a place of joy and togetherness, now carried an air of sorrow and fear. For the indigenous residents, the tragedy struck a deeper chord. The saltwater crocodile, or gal, was both a totem and a reminder of the delicate balance between humans and nature. The tragedy also reignited a broader debate about crocodile management in the Northern Territory. While some called for measures to control the growing population of these predators, others warned of the ecological consequences of such actions. Barbara's family, however, had little time for such arguments. Their grief was overwhelming, a void that no words or actions could fill. The community rallied around them, providing support in the only way they knew how, by standing together. The funeral was a somber affair, attended by nearly every resident of Naranga. What little remained of Barbara was laid to rest, a heartbreaking end to a short, vibrant life. In the weeks that followed, the people of Naranga adjusted to a new reality. The creek, once a hub of activity, was now avoided by most. Parents kept their children close, and conversations often turned to the tragedy, the shadow of it lingering over the town.